Hello, welcome to the Eyes Up Life podcast with your host, me, Ben Granis. Today is a very special day. We have the first ever episode of the Eyes Up Life podcast. And as I mentioned in the preview episode, this is the full audio from one of the 21 interviews I conducted with Maxis athletes and affiliates this fall. Today I am pleased to kick things off with the greatest, winningest motocross and supercross racer of all time, Jeremy McGrath. I won't do much of an introduction for Jeremy because that's what the interview is for. I hope you enjoy today's episode and make sure to tune in to the end of the episode to hear who will be on next week. So thank you so much for taking the time, Jeremy, today. If we'll just start by having you introduce yourself, say where you're from.
To you or to the camera?
Yeah, just talking to me. That'd be great.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Obviously, my name is Jeremy McGrath. I'm a 7-time Supercross champion, 2018 Short Course Lucas champion, and Maxis ambassador.
And where are you from, Jeremy?
I am from Encinitas, California.
Sweet. So I feel bad almost not really having the full appreciation for being able to talk to you right now because I'm not in before I started this trip, I was not really at all aware of the power sports world. So it's really cool and an honor to be talking to you. I imagine a lot of people who are going to be watching this won't really know as much about the sport as you do. So if you could just talk about, the scale of your accomplishments in your career.
Yeah. To be honest, it's kind of refreshing, to talk to someone that doesn't know anything about what I do, in certain cases, I'm the same, right? I talk to other people that I don't know anything about what they do. So in my situation, this is what I've been doing since I was a little kid. Started racing when I was 14, dirt bikes, which is kind of late, for guys, at least the guys that I race with and competed against. I was a BMX kid. So I raced BMX on track all over Southern California and then kind of all over the country from the ages of 9 to about 14. And then a friend of mine that raced BMX started racing motocross, and he's like, man, you should come check it out. So any little kid that races BMX, you have to pedal, and then when you get on a dirt bike, you have a throttle. So you're like, wow, okay, this is cool. So that's kind of where it started. My dad and mom were hobbyists, I'd say, when I was a little kid. I was born in San Francisco, and we used to go to this place called Hollister Hills, which is out of town a little ways, and it was like a motocross riding, trail park. And I'd go there as a little kid, and I think it just stuck with me, And then when I finally got on a dirt bike, it kind of all happened so fast. I started racing at 14. By the time I was almost 17, I was pro, and sort of this hobby thing turned into a dream and turned into reality, and then turned into an amazing career that I never imagined I'd ever have. So, to win a race, my goal was to, when I was a kid, I loved jumping. So my goal was to just somehow get into a stadium to be able to race Supercross, right? And for those of you who don't know what Supercross is a motocross race within let's just say Anaheim Stadium where the baseball players play. And they bring in all this dirt and they build a track with all these jumps. And it's really, really cool. And I went and visited, went to check out some of those races when I was a little kid, 10 years old. And it just was stuck with me. And so my goal was to just get into a Supercross so I could ride on those tracks, do those jumps and ride under the lights. And once I started doing that, it just sort of took off on me. And within a few years, I'd won a race. And then I'd won several races. And then I got on factory, Honda at the time, and won some championships, and it just kind of snowballed from there. And here we sit. I'm, 23, so I'm 10 years retired, right? So, yeah, sitting here still with the most Supercross wins in history of the sport.
And how many wins is that?
I have 7 championships. I raced the premier class for 10 years. I won 7 titles. I got 2 seconds and a third, and then I retired. I finished with 72 main event wins.
Wow. That's nuts. And what you said, you're still well ahead of the next.
The next closest guy is a guy that's since retired. His name's James Stewart, legend in the sport, and he has 50. So I have 22 more than him.
What would you say is something that contributed to your success at such a big scale?
I don't know. I think obviously the timing of me coming in was I had the great window. Of course, the field was stacked, but I think my BMX background with the jumping and having to be smooth and all this stuff, really, when I came in, it kind of changed the riding in the sport. It just changed the style. And my new style, BMX sort of type style that I adapted to Supercross, was just staying low on jumps, riding really fast through the faces of jumps, and saving a bunch of time and not getting giant air made a huge difference. And it took people a long time to figure that out. So just changing the guard, change the style of the sport, and I think I added a level of fun to it, having a lot of fun while I was out there, and was able to race for a long time. A lot of guys weren't able to race as long as I was. I mean, I stayed really healthy, which is pretty lucky. So motocross and supercross can be pretty dangerous, but I stayed relatively healthy and was able to get a lot of wins.
What were some of the larger setbacks that you had as you were going through your career?
I think one of the larger ones when I was a kid, just getting into the supercross, like in my first few years, I broke my leg once. I was able to compete in a race with a sort of like an air cast and a bigger boot, and I had to race and get in the top 10 to secure the championship in 1991, I think it was. And yeah, it was wild. I raced with a broken leg pretty much, but finished 9th and was able to win the series. So that was pretty cool. I broke my wrist one time. I had to get a screw in my wrist, so that set me back for a couple months. But it was after the Supercross season, so I got lucky. I won the title with a broken wrist, pretty much, and then I went in for surgery after that. So I raced about the last 3 races with a broken wrist, and then I went into surgery, so I was off for a couple months. So the timing of some of this stuff was really, really lucky, but those were 2 pretty major setbacks. After I retired, I hurt myself a few times, but probably just because I wasn't paying attention, as much as I needed to be. I wasn't focused. I was just out having fun, and ended up fracturing my neck one time, dislocated my hip one time, maybe twice, and yeah, just kind of these weird little circumstances, but thankfully it was after I was done racing really seriously.
What's your life looked like on the whole since retiring? Like, are you still?
Yeah, I think, being an athlete in sport, I think, I always had this goal of retiring, obviously healthy, but also retiring before I hated the sport. A lot of athletes, I think, at the end just have a chip on their shoulder, and they just don't like the sport anymore. Whether it's the pull on them to be in certain places, it's the travel, it's not getting paid enough, it's the fans bugging you, whatever someone might think it might be. And living in the spotlight's kind of tough sometimes. And thank God I did it all through the era of not having social media. So you're able to grow up, make mistakes, and learn from them. Now it's everyone's under the microscope. So, yeah, I think, being able to grow up in that kind of, my biggest thing was to be able to leave the sport in a good way and still love my motorcycle, which is the tool that provided me a life of, people call it a job, but I was a sporting athlete for a living. That's not a job. It's tough to consider that a job anyway. I was having a lot of fun. But yeah, since then I still love the sport. Become a host on some shows. just ambassador for a lot of partners that I've had throughout the industry throughout the years, and just created some great relationships. Developed a lot of products, helped companies develop a lot of products, been the face of a lot of companies, such as Maxxis. And since racing dirt bikes, I went in and raced off-road short course trucks and was able to win a lot and win a championship for Maxxis. And then since then, we've developed some new motocross tires for Supercross and motocross that are out there that the kids are riding now. And so just been able to be lucky enough to be part of a lot of cool things, and still doing it. Working for Maxxis, working for Kawasaki, traveling to events, hosting TV shows, doing autograph signings, and just able to be me. So it's a pretty good life.
So if you can think back, you touched on social media. We'll put a pin in that. But if you can go back to your young self when you were just getting into the sport, what were you feeling that told you that that this is what you wanted to pursue and do for a while?
Well, honestly, when I got into it, I think, a sport like this, I'm not sure you get into the sport and go like, yeah, this is the, at least in that era, I don't think you got into the sport and go, yeah, I'm going to be a professional motocross racer or a supercross racer. That's what I want to do. 6 months before I was a professional dirt bike racer, I was bagging groceries at Vaughn's, just out of high school. I mean, I honestly thought I was going to college. The dirt bike thing was a hobby, and like I started at 14, which was really late. So the learning curve was super steep. To be starting at 14 and pro at 16 or 17 is a pretty short span. So even at that point, I still didn't, at that point, you didn't know if that could be a job. Something that you could make money at, something that you could survive at. The generation before me, like the one guy that won everything, he was the guy that one or two guys were the only guys that were able to sort of not have to work after the fact, right? After their sport was over. And I was lucky enough, those guys were the guys I looked up to, right? So I imagined that I'm going to be working. I'm going to go to college and all this stuff. But then it started to snowball. I started winning. I started getting paid. I started getting these deals. I started really doing well. And it turned into a life that I never imagined. So looking back, I just didn't think it was going to be a job. I didn't think I was going to make money at it. I just didn't know. But I knew I loved it, and I knew I was good at it. So I think that it's proof that your passion can win out, right? So if you have enough passion and you're good enough at something, if you go after your dreams, I think you can get it. I'm proof of that. And I'm sitting here today still pinch myself when I look at where I live and I look at the career that I've had, and something I never imagined.
Is there anything that you would do differently or advice you'd give to your younger self?
I think the advice I always give to my kids, I have 2 daughters and I'm trying to raise them. But the advice I give is, I had a lot of talent as a sports kid. I was like really good. But I think being really good is a little bit of a disadvantage because you kind of rely on your talent and you don't recognize early enough that the dedication and the workload that you put with the talent can be just unstoppable. And it took me a long time to figure that out. I relied on my talents for about the first 3 or 4 or 5 years and didn't work hard enough. I thought I was working, but didn't really work hard enough. And I think that if I could pass any message to my younger self, would be like to recognize what you have a little bit earlier. And I realized I was a kid in a grown-up world, and you think you have everything under control as a kid. But looking back, I just wish I would have listened to my dad a little bit earlier and maybe put a little more work in. Eventually I got it, so I understand that now. And when I worked hard and I had the natural talent that I was born with, it was unstoppable. I mean, I won so many races, so much, I just kicked everyone's ass, which was great. But I wish I would have recognized it a little bit earlier. And my daughters are the same with the sport. One of them's really good and loves to work, and one's really good but doesn't love to work. So I'm trying to instill that part where the workload makes a difference. And that's probably what I'd tell myself, my young self.
Once you started getting all these victories under your belt, how did you stay focused on the work and keep continuing to improve?
I think, look, my dad was a mechanic by trade for his whole life. He had to bust his knuckles every single day for 35,000 a year. And he provided a great family life for me and my sister and my mom. And it's pretty amazing. He was a conservative guy, just head down, do a lot of work, and it'll happen. And that's what he did. And I think for me, as I started winning, it could have been really easy to get out of control. Big head and sort of forget your values. And for me, I tried to just always think of myself as the underdog. I mean, even though I was winning a lot of races, and I was just like, it could be over tomorrow. You're only as good as your last race. It could be over tomorrow, so someone's here to beat you. And I just always thought of myself as the underdog, and it just really kept me grounded for a long, long time, and I was able to get through a long career without getting off the rails, too much. There's a couple instances throughout my career that I was a little too cocky, a little too maybe arrogant. There's just a fine line between arrogance and confidence, I think. And, life has a way of smacking you down when you get too arrogant. And it happened to me. I would think I was too good and crash or whatever and hurt myself. So it was a great way to recognize, like, hey, you're getting too big for your britches, So luckily I was able to keep it in check and race for a long time without life having a way of smacking me down. So I think just trying to think of yourself as the underdog, at least it worked for me. It really keeps you grounded.
So you mentioned earlier, this is taking the pin out of the social media piece. You, for most of your career, or maybe all of your career, it was before social media was a big piece. Can you talk, I guess, a little bit about how you got exposure then before social media, or what that sort of world was like now that you have social media and that sort of contrast?
Well, I mean, it's weird, but we did it the old school way, right? Back in our sport, we had magazines and we had different little TV shows that you could do interviews on. In fact, when I started winning, we started getting a little bit of ESPN sort of, recognition maybe. ESPN was paying attention to our sport a little bit and showing little clips here and there, which was really good for me because at that time I was winning. Just tried to do every little thing I could do outside of the racing part, If you just stuck to the racing part, there wasn't much going on. I had a publicist back then, which is kind of another old school way of doing it, right? And she really worked hard to get me on different TV shows. I was on Jay Leno twice with the Supercross track with my dirt bike up on stage talking to Jay. It was pretty cool, and that was kind of unheard of for our sport. So I worked hard at promoting the sport, but also promoting my own self, which is my own brand, which allowed me to, created more opportunity, created more, brand, so you could go out and sell yourself a little bit better. So in the early 90s, it was really tough. But in the middle of the 90s, it started to kind of happen, and we were getting these TV shows and these different things. And we were shooting our own practice, our own videos. So we were coming out with DVDs back then that were just like riding stuff away from the racetracks, not racing, and just lifestyle stuff. And that created a lot of, hype, I guess you'd say. So I was doing everything I could. I just wanted to be different. I just wanted to do everything different than anyone else. And I did. I had my own video game. I had 2 video games, Supercross 98 and then Supercross 2000, which is Jeremy McGrath, Supercross 98, for Acclaim Sports. And I think through the winning, just a lot of opportunities happen, but I tried to capitalize on all of it.
Right. So now, you have a very strong social media presence now. So talk to me about what your relationship has been with social media since you got it and how you got to where you are now.
Yeah, social media is I'm kind of like right on the verge of being old enough to not really want to deal with it. But, social media is a necessary evil. Unfortunately, it is this time in this era. This is how you get people. Whether it's outlandish stuff or whether it's racing stuff or whether it's your personal stuff, whatever it is, this is how people spread their message. And I enjoy it. It's Instagram, for instance, like Facebook. I wasn't really into Facebook much. Instagram is kind of where I started my thing, and then obviously you can connect that to Facebook throughout the you know throughout the travels. But I've done most of it myself. I've had some friends come on and help me with some of the stuff I do with Instagram and all that when I get super tired of it. But I just keep it pretty mellow. I don't overpost. I follow a lot of athletes, and I try not to make it. I still want to mix in some personal stuff. I want it to feel like it's me. I don't want it to be commercial, and I know a lot of it is out there these days, and that stuff's pretty tiring. So I don't know. I used to really like Instagram a lot, but recently it's changed where you don't see anyone that you actually follow anymore. So it's kind of disheartening. The family and the personal fun part of it's kind of left Instagram at least for now. So I don't know. Just try to film some cool stuff, put it on there. But I don't mind it. But I don't feel attached. I don't feel like I'm trapped and have to be on it. So
How do you maintain a balance with it? Like, I mean, do you ever feel like you're getting swept up in it and you have to take
back
yourself
away.
out of it? Yeah, or not really?
I try to maintain a balance. The way I look at it is I just try to, if there's something worthy of filming or making a video of or something, then I do it. Other than that, I try to take care of fun stuff when it comes to personal relationships, like Kawasaki, for instance, or Monster or Maxxis. My three really heavy hitters that I have. Just try to fulfill the obligations, but do it with fun, and do it creatively. We're racing side by sides now with my daughters, and so having like fun Maxxis tire content is pretty easy these days because we're either at the shop working on the cars, or we're out driving them, or we're doing something with the family, and it's just really easy content. So yeah, I just try to keep it within the parameters, not be a prisoner of it.
So, yeah, it's interesting. So you have two high school age daughters. What's been your experience as a parent with them having cell phones, social media, and all of that?
Yeah, my experience with them as a parent has been, they're my older one's 17-year-old or 16-year-old. She's a little too much attached to it. I think like the kids these days. They don't know any different. But it's my job to probably try to keep it limited a little bit. We try to, but it's difficult with teenagers. It's difficult. So we're struggling just like any other parent out there with the phone thing. And, I think being out in public, being a racer and being in sports and talking to the parents and doing things, just making the kids be out there is an important thing for me because that's how I had to do it. I was not afraid to talk to people, and I don't want my kids to just grow up like this. You know what I mean? So we gotta watch it.
Yeah. Do you feel like you've been pretty successful at helping them appreciate being away from their phones, and how?
Well, I think as I remember being a kid, right? Your parents used to tell you things over and over and over and over, and they just thought you were never listening. And I think that same thing rings true with us as parents. We keep telling our kids over and over and over and over like they're not listening, but I think somewhere in there they must be listening, and that'll come out later. And that's the same things I recognize when I was like 18. You think that's just parent noise, right? That's coming to you. But when you're about 25, you're like, I think my dad was right, or you recognize that your parents were right on some of this stuff. So, there's challenges to go with it. Our kids are pretty good. They've been pretty good. So I think we're pretty lucky in that part. But, sometimes it's frustrating.
What's frustrating?
Sure.
Just the whole...
The distraction. Yeah. I think the frustration part with the kids is the distraction with the phone. But they do a lot of homework with their computers and their phones and stuff these days, and that's a lot of them how they communicate with that TikTok and all that stuff. And you're just like, again, for us, it's like we're old school, right? So we don't totally understand it. So we try to find the balance,
Do you have any like hard lines, like no phones at the dinner table,
Yeah.
or like do you have special like certain times a day where you're like,
We definitely have no phones at the dinner table, and we've actually considered the whole basket thing. When you walk in, you put your phone in the basket, and you're not allowed to touch it anymore. So when times get real frustrating, we toy with that idea. Haven't implemented it yet, but thinking about it.
it's in the back pocket?
It's in the back pocket. It's a threat
Right.
we might follow through on, so we'll see.
What seems like the biggest distraction for your kids? Is it Instagram, TikTok, or?
Yeah, it's they'll sit for hours and look at it, and just look at random nonsense, nothing. So it's just a waste of time.
Right. Yeah.
It's a time eater, and you're not learning anything. It's just I think, you think about China, right? China has this same. They're the ones that created TikTok. That there's a problem, but you think on their TikTok comes all the funny videos and stuff? No, on theirs is probably educational videos and different things. They're not letting their kids sit around and turn into dummy mush heads by looking at funny videos. I think that's something that we all have to consider, It's looking at the phone for the most part is 10% work or homework, or 10% needed, 90% not needed. So you just have to figure out how to balance that, I guess.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. My dad literally just sent to my family yesterday a piece on 60 Minutes the other day, and they were talking just about TikTok and how China created it, and yet they filter what people, I forget what the age is, like 15 and under, can only see like videos that are helpful, not the garbage that everyone's exposed to.
Oh, not here, though.
No,
But that's by design.
Right.
They're trying to ruin our next generation.
And they make more money because of it.
Exactly, but I think they're also trying to dumb down our population.
Right,
and it's working.
It's a huge bummer.
It's a huge bummer. You think that someone couldn't be that maybe manipulative, maybe, or evil, but it's out there.
Yeah, yeah.
So.
It's an interesting thing to.
I mean, you can ignore it or not, but it's happening.
Right, and you can only ignore it to a certain extent, right?
Yeah.
So is your oldest daughter driving yet?
She is. Yeah, her name's Rowan. She's driving. She's had her license for 1 year. She's about to turn 17. Yeah.
So you're the first person that I've interviewed with a driving age child, I think. So, what's your experience with distractions in the car personally, and then how do you approach that with Rowan?
Yeah, well, it's for one, she's grown up racing, right? So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. She has car control experience. I was relieved that when she got her license, she had that experience behind her. But yes, we are pretty hard on the distraction with the phones in the car. It's a risky business. I'm a biker, and I'm a guy that spends time out on the roads. And there's been close calls with a lot of my friends, and even friends that have been hit. So I know how distraction can hurt people, and so we're pretty big on that. Does she listen? I would hope so, that she listens when I'm not around, but we're pretty big on it.
And when you say you're big on it and you work hard on it, what does that actually look like? Like how are you?
We talk about it. I mean, we talk about it, right? So we talk about phones and the distraction and the accidents that her friends are getting hit. They're all riding e-bikes around here. Before she got her license, all of them were on e-bikes riding everywhere, and some of the kids have been hit. The boys have been hit. The kids are just as distracted on the bicycles too, though. So it goes both ways. The car is dangerous, of course, because it's a big, heavy piece of machinery. But the bikers pull out in front of the cars because they're not paying attention and all this stuff. So the etiquette and education that the kids have is really lacking too when it comes to biking or any kind of street knowledge, right? Street, like driving etiquette. A lot of them are out there and doing all the things that on their bicycles that drivers do, but they don't know the rules. So it becomes pretty dangerous for the cars and the bikers. So I think the more we talk about it, the more etiquette that I can teach them to build into their driving and their stuff, you know, it helps. It has to help. But we talk about the injuries that kids get. We talk about the dumb people that are on the phones that almost hit other people. We see it. We see it in front of us. We see people swerving all over, 80, 50. You know, they go 80, then 50, then, you know, so you see it all over the place. It's easy to see now, a lot different than it used to be. So we discuss it quite a lot, and we make it known that, you know, you're not supposed to be using your phone in the car.
What do you think would be something that would help us as a society to I totally agree with you that talking about it more and just increased education would be super helpful. What do you think is going to be a factor that kind of turns the tide towards fewer distracted drivers?
You know, I don't know. I think that I really think, honestly, when you hop in the car, your phone should not text. Like, that would be a good rule. If your phone just did not text while you were in the car, and somehow your phone knew you were in the car, and once your phone knows you're going past 10 miles an hour or whatever, you can't text on it. And I don't know how they can do that, but they can do a lot of things, and I'm sure they can figure it out. But I think increased education, increased videos, examples of what happens, examples of, and starting at young, and it should be in school probably. Lord knows they have all kinds of other wild stuff in school these days. They could get some serious with some education on this, because this is, you know, it's killing kids, and drivers are getting in trouble for it. So I think, you know, it starts young. We're all pretty learning. All this stuff's new, right? I mean, e-biking's new. Phones are all new to the little kids. Years ago, you didn't get a phone until you're like 15 or 16. You didn't really want one, right? You're out riding your bike, out doing stuff. But now kids are having them really young, so they might as well start teaching them really young.
So you mentioned the phone piece. Do you know about the driving focus feature on your phone?
Yeah,
Do you use it?
I use it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do your
It's the same
daughters?
feature that you use at night when you go to sleep. You can put your phone on sleep.
Right, but your
Yeah.
phone can know if you're driving, and then you don't get notifications.
Oh yeah, you know what? I forgot. I didn't even know that.
Do you want to learn so then you can teach your daughters?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so you have your phone right there?
I need to learn it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's if you go into settings.
Whoop.
Is that some social media there, Jeremy?
No, it just it clipped on.
That's awesome.
Let's see. So you can go to this thing right here, focus.
Right. So, but you can have it turn on automatically when you're in your car.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So if you go
Oh.
into your settings app,
Settings. All right.
and then there's a focus thing,
Oh yeah,
see
focus. Okay.
and then I don't know, driving might be there, probably not. But if it just hit the plus in the upper right,
Driving's not there.
and then there'll
Plus.
and then there should be a
Oh
driving.
yeah, it says driving. Oh wow. When you're on the road, stay focused and silent. Customize focus. So what does that mean? So hit the customize button.
Yeah, sure. I'm not sure what this guys already have it, so I'm not sure what it looks like. But you can
Customize screens. Choose the lock screen to turn on to help distractions. So turn on automatically while driving. So this is driving focus. So choose. No. That's pretty cool. So you can have it turn on automatically, or you can have it when it connects to Bluetooth
or CarPlay.
or CarPlay.
Yeah,
Activate with CarPlay.
and I don't know if it showed up with the option, but you can also have your phone automatically reply to your contacts a text saying that you're driving, so that they know not to expect a message until you're done driving.
Oh, okay. All the others be silenced. Oh, that's pretty cool.
It's been a really. I just started using it before I started my bike ride, and since then it's sparked a lot of conversations with people because they're like, "Oh yeah, I saw your text. That's really cool. I had no idea you can do that." I think the phone manufacturers could do a much better job of making
Well,
it
until you
known.
just told me that, I didn't know you could do it either.
Right. Yeah, it's super helpful because then you don't have to think about it
Yeah.
again. You know.
No, you hop in the car and it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
And you're not getting texts or nothing.
right. Yeah. So it's one small step, and that's
Yeah. Makes it
it's a big
sure
project.
makes a big difference, I'm
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. So it'd be
Yeah.
cool to
Very
share
cool.
that with Rowan and
Yeah,
them.
I'll share it with my daughters, Rowan and Bergen. Yep.
So while your phone's out, I know you're in the pool of people who have a special awareness for your phone usage. But do you ever look at or discuss with your family screen time?
Oh yeah.
You do.
Yeah.
So are
And
you
that's
like
a major problem with our kids, yeah.
so like what are some things that come up when you talk about it?
Well, I mean, just too much screen time is the problem, right? And we have it set on. They have a set parameters for screen time.
So you guys use the feature that like
Yep, allows them a certain amount of time, and then if they want more, they have to ask us.
for certain apps.
Right.
And what are the apps that you guys limit?
Well, TikTok and Instagram, and all the social media ones.
What's like the rough window that you guys limit it to? It's like an hour a day, or
Yeah, it's like an hour. We haven't given them like an hour. I think it is hour and 20 minutes or something.
is that on each app or
No, hour total.
okay?
Hour total. Yep.
And how is that?
Has it worked?
Yeah.
Well, sometimes they have to. Sometimes they feel like they need more so they can do something because the phone basically won't work. So they want to get on with their friends to do homework. You know what I mean? So we have to figure out some compromise with that. But for the social media app, it's working a little bit. Yeah.
There's a study that came out, I think it was last year, that says that the average American, based on current social media use, will spend about 5 years of their life on social media over the course of their life.
Holy moly.
Yeah, it's a lot.
That's a lot. That's a lot of wasted time. 5 years.
It's a lot, and I was blown away when I saw that, and then they break it down into like how much.
Hours and
Yeah,
days and all this stuff.
But it's only like 90 minutes, maybe an hour 45 on social media total per day.
Really? And that's going to equal about 5 years by the time you're dead.
So it's less than
Yeah.
you think. So if you spend, 2 hours watching YouTube videos a day, like that adds up. And
Dang. Yeah.
but it gets back to your point earlier that it's a necessary evil. There is good about it.
There is. There's plenty of bad too. But, you can look at that statistic also for watching TV. I mean, I guarantee that statistic goes way up when you talk about TV time. You know what I mean? Because everyone's pastime is to watch TV, especially with the family when you're all together at night, whatever. So, yeah. I think the phone's probably worse, though, because it's your eye. I think it messes your eyes up. I don't know.
It's a more like direct connection. But yeah, you're right. TV.
Well, and mostly that thing about like this, where you're like looking at your phone just like this and this only, and everything else is channeled out. I don't like that. We don't like that at all. That's what we don't like about our kids. We don't want our kids doing that because we just don't want them to. Kids are too accustomed now to look at their phone and just not look at anything else.
Right. It's not only dangerous, but you're missing what's around you.
You're missing life itself. That's not life. Looking at a phone is not life.
Right.
So.
You mentioned some personal connections to distracted driving. I'm wondering what's the extent of your connections?
I mean, when you have kids and you have this small community around here, you just really hear about, kids getting hit, kids getting clipped, and some, I mean, around here, in your own town, you hear about this stuff locally, right? I mean, some people around here, we live in a big biking community, so people get hit all the time. So some I know, some I don't know, but a lot of the kids have been, it goes around when the kids get clipped or something happens with them. So we hear about it a lot. That's about as far as it goes for me. I don't have anyone that got killed or anything that I know. anyone that I know. Oh, you know what? I take that back. One of my friends that was a MotoGP champion in 2006, he he got killed. He was in Italy training, doing some riding, road biking, and got killed. So I do know someone that got killed.
How does being a cyclist and your racing experience influence your relationship to driving and distractions in the car?
I mean, naturally, I'm guilty of probably thinking that I have everything under control, just like everyone else thinks they do. So, you know, I try to be as concentrated as possible. Sometimes it's hard. You never know.
Do you feel like it changed when you had kids?
Yeah, I feel like it changed. I feel like it changed when there was a time when texting wasn't that important. It was just phone calls. I feel like it changed as the level of, you know, instant response got more critical. People just, it's like we live in this life of like now, instantly. And if you don't respond, it's like, hey, where were you? What's going on? Blah, blah, blah. And so people just are not very patient, like when it comes to this stuff. So I feel like the distraction got a lot more when it was like, people are forced to take care of business quick now. Because if you don't, someone else will. So I think that somewhere along the lines, our world's lost a little bit of patience when it comes to giving someone some space to respond or understand what's going on and come back with a response, whatever. So, and I think that, it's this instant gratification thing, and we're all guilty of it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see like just how can it really continue on this track because we're already like so
I know.
demanding.
Yeah, I don't know how. I mean, it's the technology is what's causing it, I think. And look, you can't fault technology. I mean, technology happens. It's really a great thing. But at the same time, I mean, it's happening so fast now that, like, everything's instant. We're like living in life like real time. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out.
Right. Well, just a couple more questions, Jeremy. What would you say to a young person who's this is kind of a switch of gears, but someone who's chasing a dream but feels like they can't because they need to make money doing something that society's sort of pressuring them into, like they want to do something cool, like become a supercross racer or whatever, like
Yeah,
those
whatever their
classic.
passion is. Yeah.
Right. What would you say to those people to try to encourage them?
Well, listen, I think that when you're a kid, you understand that you have some talent for something, and if you have enough passion for it, I think it can work. But life's tough, right? And sports are tough. It's not easy. I know plenty of kids that when I was young, they had life pretty easy, and they just didn't really, they just didn't really make it because they had life too much. Life was too easy for them. So in certain instances, I think that creating, your life atmosphere creates drive. If you have a life of excess when you're young, it doesn't give you any reason to work, right? So I think that if people can find reason to work hard, they can do it. Now the question is, can you do it when you're young enough where you don't really have any responsibility or you don't have any overhead at that point, right? Because life comes at you fast, and you get to a certain age, you're like, man, I don't know if I have time to put into this because I got to go be a man. I got to grow up and work and make a living for myself. I think if you're young and you if you can understand that if you have some ability to go do it and you can chase your dreams a little bit and chase them for a while, you should, because it can work out. I think you got to put everything into it though. There's no halfways. It's not going to be easy.
Yeah.
It's not going to be easy. Being great is not easy.
So you've had a great career. What are some things that you're like? What are your current dreams and aspirations for the next
bit?
Yeah, I think, for me, what I missed out on being a young athlete is just the life of business, and I really enjoy it. I think throughout my career, and having contracts and dealing with different manufacturers and dealing with different people and building relationships really has taught me a lot about business. I'm not college educated. I didn't do that, but I am, I was listening and learning and paying attention throughout my career, so business for me has been really fun since retiring. So yeah, I think my goals now are just to try to raise, two young, respectful daughters, and get them to college and get them going. Something I didn't have to do, and just keep building great relationships. I think life's built on great relationships, and that's what I'm doing.
Cool. And last one, something you're looking forward to in the next 6 months?
Well, I think we're almost at the end of the year, right? So 24, or no, it's coming up 23. 23, I'm just looking forward to having a lot of fun with my kids. We're going to do some racing this year in the Kawasaki side-by-sides, and just some good family fun, and stay away from the phones as much as possible.
Can I get you to commit to driving distraction free?
Yep, I'm on it. I like the new setting, and I'm definitely going to do it.
Sweet. Can you say, promise to drive distraction free?
I am committed to driving distraction free.
Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Jeremy McGrath. Jeremy is, as you could tell, just a really nice guy, really easy to talk to, and loves his sport and cares a lot about the safety of our roads, and wants to make them safer for everyone else. This is the first of 21 of these interviews, so they'll be coming out weekly. So next week, we'll have a professional photographer named Adam Campbell. You may not know him, but he is one of the most talented photographers in the power sports world, and an avid cyclist. I actually went for a ride with him just after the interview, and he showed me some beautiful roads in the hills of western Los Angeles. So tune in next week for that conversation with Adam Campbell, and to make sure you don't miss future episodes and video releases, subscribe to Eyes Up Ride on Instagram and follow Eyes Up Life in your podcast app. Thanks for listening. Remember to please drive distraction free, and we'll see you next week.